So, um, if you look at a map of the ancient world, you'll see this sprawling red ink of the Roman Empire, right?
Oh, yeah. Or the massive footprint of the Mongols.
Exactly. Or the immense architecture of the Egyptians. We have this tendency, I think, to measure the greatness of a civilization by its sheer physical volume.
Right, like how many millions of square miles did you conquer?
Yeah, or how massive were the armies you fielded? I mean, how intimidating are the stone monuments you left behind? We sort of treat human legacy as a strictly quantitative game of risk.
We really do. And by those specific metrics, the people at the center of our discussion today barely even register.
No, not at all.
I mean, in worldly geopolitical terms, the ancient Hebrews were a really small, often subjugated population. They were just living on this tiny strip of land between massive warring empires.
But here is the profound twist for you. Those sprawling empires that were built on brute force and forced labor, they eventually collapsed under their own weight.
Completely. They went totally bankrupt.
Right. Their armies scattered, and today, I mean, their monuments are basically just tourist attractions.
Hmm.
But this historically small group of people managed to outlast them all.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. They didn't build a legacy on military conquest. They essentially conquered time itself,
Yeah.
just through the sheer unmatched force of their ideas.
And what's fascinating here is how it forces a complete reevaluation of what makes a civilization actually endure.
Definitely. Which is why today's deep dive is so important.
Yeah, we are looking at the foundational concepts of Judaism today. We're specifically drawing from Houston Smith's analysis in his book, The World's Religions.
A classic.
It really is. And what becomes immediately clear reading it is that their survival wasn't just some accident of geography.
Right.
It was the result of a highly specific psychological and spiritual architecture.
So we're tackling a massive question today. It's an answer broken down into 15 interconnected concepts that function together like like a blueprint.
A blueprint for reality, really.
Exactly. And that question is, how does Judaism's passion for meaning weave together the nature of God, the physical creation, human existence, history, morality, justice, suffering, and ultimate hope into a single unbreakable framework?
It's a lot to cover.
It is, but our mission today is to show you how this isn't just ancient theology. It is a highly practical operating system for navigating your everyday reality.
And you know, what's fascinating here is how urgently relevant this framework is for us today.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we live in an era characterized by chronic information overload. And with that comes this creeping sense of nihilism.
Because we're just bombarded with endless disconnected data points every single day.
Right. And when that happens, it is incredibly easy to just conclude that the universe is chaotic, absurd, and completely indifferent to human life.
Yeah, just totally random.
Exactly. But this framework offers the exact opposite lens. It demands that you view the universe as deeply intentional.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand that intentionality, we have to start right at the bedrock. Like, where does meaning actually originate?
That's the core question. Houston Smith argues that what lifted the Jews from obscurity to permanent religious greatness was their relentless passion for meaning.
But you can't just declare that life has meaning in a vacuum.
No, you
I
can't.
mean, it has to come from somewhere.
It begins with their conception of God, which was, quite frankly, radically different from their neighbors.
How so?
Well, in many ancient cultures, the gods were basically just amplified humans.
Oh, like the Greek pantheon.
Exactly. They were capricious, they threw tantrums, they stole from each other. They were fundamentally bound by the same chaotic fate as mortals.
Or, in other philosophies, ultimate reality was viewed as a blind, dead machine. Just physics.
Right. And if ultimate reality is chaotic, or if it's just dead, then human life is ultimately an accident. It's totally groundless.
But Judaism posits something completely different. It says the universe is rooted in a divine, purposeful, and morally serious God.
Yes. God isn't a chaotic force of nature. God is a mind, a will, a moral center.
And why does that specific structural difference matter so much?
Because by establishing a moral God as the source, all other meaning suddenly becomes possible.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if the creator of the universe is fundamentally good and purposeful, then the universe itself has a moral structure.
Meaning our ideas of justice and morality aren't just biological illusions.
Or social constructs, exactly. They are anchored in the very fabric of reality.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy because I think this explains why they survived when others didn't. Think about those massive military empires we just talked about.
The Romans, the Babylonians.
Right, they operate like bloated centralized corporations. They rely on a massive headquarters, like a king or an emperor, to issue orders.
And when the headquarters is destroyed, the whole corporation goes bankrupt.
Exactly, the empire just shatters. But Judaism develops something closer to an open source foundational code.
I love that analogy.
Right. Because the core architecture is this portable, deeply internalized passion for meaning anchored in God. It doesn't fundamentally require a centralized geopolitical state to survive.
So when the empires come in and smash the physical headquarters?
The code survives.
Yeah.
Because it has been downloaded into the minds, the habits, and the daily lives of the people. It adapts and it runs anywhere.
And the place where that code executes is the physical world.
Which makes sense.
It really does. Because God is the purposeful architect, it radically changes how we interact with the material stuff around us. Just look at the book of Genesis.
Right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate. It calls creation good and ultimately very good.
Which sounds simple, but it's actually a massive philosophical departure.
Huge. It means the physical world, nature, your body, food, marriage, all of this ordinary material life matters deeply.
Now wait, I need to push back on this a bit on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
Because it sounds a bit contradictory in practice. So many other traditions, ancient and modern, teach that true spirituality means detaching from worldly things.
The ascetic approach.
Exactly. They argue the physical world is a trap or an illusion, and the goal is to just float above it and escape your physical desires.
Right.
But here, Judaism says the physical world is very good. But if it's so good, why is the religion famous for having literally thousands of incredibly strict rules about what you can eat, when you can work, and how you govern your body?
That's a very fair point.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a celebration of the physical world. That sounds like extreme suspicion of it.
This raises an important question, and it's the exact paradox we need to unpack. The rules, like the kosher dietary laws, the Sabbath restrictions, they do not exist because the physical world is evil or dirty.
Okay. And why are they there?
They exist to sanctify it. Judaism heavily resists the absolute opposition between, low matter and high spirit.
So you aren't trying to escape your physical body to be holy.
No, not at all. You achieve holiness through your physical existence.
So the physical world is essentially just raw material.
Exactly. It's raw, it's wild, and it's incredibly potent. Think about eating, working, sexuality. These are powerful physical realities.
And you leave them to pure instinct, they can be pretty destructive.
Exactly. The rules are the architectural framework that shapes that raw, very good material into something holy. You don't ignore hunger. You elevate the act of eating by being mindful of what and how you eat.
Wow, that reframes the entire concept of what it means to be a human being.
It really does.
We aren't just meat machines following our instincts, but we also aren't pure, flawless angels either.
Yeah.
We exist right in that tension.
We have immense physical appetites and vulnerabilities, yes, but we also have divine parentage and moral agency.
We have the dignity and, honestly, the tremendous burden of choice.
And choice is what makes human life a morally serious endeavor. We are not just victims of blind fate.
We can miss the mark, we sin, we fail, but we can also return to the path and live rightly.
And because individual human choices matter, the collective story of those choices, which is human history, becomes an arena of divine action.
This is a huge shift. I mean, many philosophies look for ultimate truth by stepping completely outside of time.
Right, trying to reach some timeless, ethereal plane.
Exactly. Or they view history as this depressing, meaningless loop that just repeats forever. But here, meaning is forged in the dirt and the timeline of history.
Real historical events are where you find God. The Exodus is the perfect example of this.
Right, the escape from Egypt.
Yeah. God isn't only found in some private mystical trance on a mountaintop. God is found in the messy, bloody, collective story of a people literally walking out of slavery.
It means God actually cares about human suffering in the real political world.
Yes. But the Exodus also sets up the next critical piece of the framework, which is morality.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because walking out of Egypt wasn't the end of the story. They didn't just escape and then go sit on a beach for the rest of time.
No, they didn't.
The Exodus was immediately followed by the Sinai covenant. And we really need to clarify what a covenant actually is, because it's not just a vague promise.
No, covenant is a binding legal and relational treaty. And in this historical context, it is a staggering concept.
It really is.
It is the idea that the supreme creator of the universe willingly binds itself to a contract with a group of mortal humans. There are terms, conditions, blessings, and severe demands.
To use a modern visual, imagine the Exodus was about taking the chains off and enslaved people.
Okay.
But if you just take the chains off and say, go do whatever you want, you don't get a society.
Yeah.
You get chaos.
Total anarchy. Yeah.
Right? Freedom wasn't the ultimate goal here. Freedom was the prerequisite. At Sinai, God essentially handed them a steering wheel.
I like that.
The law,
Yeah.
the covenant, the morality, that was the steering wheel. They were given freedom specifically so they could drive, so they could shoulder the massive responsibility of building a moral society.
The steering wheel of responsibility. And that responsibility scales up rapidly from the individual to the entire society, which introduces the profound dimension of justice.
Yes, the Hebrew prophets, figures like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos,
They fundamentally altered Western political thought.
they didn't just sit around writing poetry in the woods, they actively confronted power.
Oh, they stood right in the courts of kings and loudly declared that a society is judged entirely by its justice.
Specifically how it treats the marginalized, the poor, the widow, and the orphan.
Exactly. They insisted that the future of the nation depended on the fairness of its social order.
Which means religion is deeply public. You can't just lock your faith away in a private prayer closet while the society around you is corrupt.
No, you can't. The prophets explicitly warned that if a nation performs beautiful religious rituals in the temple, but simultaneously exploits the poor in the marketplace.
That nation stands under divine judgment.
Exactly. Faith and political action are completely inseparable.
But this brings us to a massive collision, doesn't it?
The problem of suffering, yes.
Right, because if God is fundamentally good, and history is an arena of meaning, and we are commanded to build a just society, how do you explain the overwhelming presence of tragedy?
It's the hardest question.
And historically, the Jewish people faced absolutely apocalyptic levels of suffering. I mean, we need to ground this in reality, because it wasn't just abstract theology for them.
No, it was their lived experience. Think about when the Babylonian Empire came in.
Right, they didn't just lose a minor political battle. Their capital was destroyed. Solomon's temple, the literal physical center of their connection to God, was burned to the ground.
They were dragged from their homes and forced into exile in Babylon.
And when your entire world is reduced to ash like that, how does a passion for meaning not just shatter into pure nihilism? Isn't it kind of dangerous to assign meaning to suffering? Does it risk making excuses for terrible things or, I don't know, cheapening real pain?
That is the crucible, but the prophets tackled this trauma head-on, and to be clear, they did not offer cheap positive thinking platitudes.
Thank goodness.
Right. They didn't claim that suffering was inherently good, and they never denied the agonizing reality of the pain. Instead, they provided mechanisms to transform suffering so that it wouldn't entirely destroy the human spirit.
Let's break down those mechanisms, because they are profound. They basically identified 4 specific ways suffering can be transformed, rather than just pointlessly endured.
First is endurance itself.
Just the sheer refusal to let the empire erase you.
Exactly. Remaining faithful when it is brutally hard is a literal form of spiritual resistance.
Okay, what's the second?
Second is witness.
Like witnessing to the rest of the world.
Yes. It's demonstrating the seriousness of your convictions. When a people maintains their identity and their moral code, even in exile, even under the threat of death.
It broadcasts this incredibly powerful message about the unbreakable dignity of the human soul.
Precisely. Then there is purification.
Now, how does suffering purify? That sounds a bit harsh.
Well, it strips away false confidence. Before the exile, there was a real temptation to treat God like a lucky charm or a national mascot.
Oh, like, as long as we have the physical temple, we're invincible.
Exactly. The destruction of the temple burned away that arrogant illusion. It purified their faith, forcing them to realize that their connection to God relied on internal moral integrity, not just an indestructible building.
Wow. And the fourth mechanism is service.
Right. The idea that someone can carry the burden of suffering in a way that actually benefits others. It's the willingness to endure pain so that the moral fabric of the community can survive.
But let's be honest about human endurance for a second. Enduring suffering, even with these 4 amazing mechanisms, is exhausting.
It is utterly depleting.
Yeah. If you just endure, generation after generation, you eventually just run out of steam. To keep moving forward, you need a destination.
Which brings us to messianism. You cannot sustain a civilization on endurance alone. You need a horizon.
Something to look forward to.
Yes, messianism is the deeply held expectation of a fundamentally transformed future. It is the hope that God will eventually intervene to restore Israel, establish universal justice, and bring absolute peace to the world.
And hope here isn't just, wishful thinking or daydreaming about a better tomorrow.
Far from it.
In this framework, hope is an active, militant moral force. If God is just, then evil, exile, and oppression absolutely cannot be the final truth of the universe.
The story hasn't ended yet.
Right. And that conviction generates this incredible forward-looking energy. It calls people to actively work toward that righteous future instead of just surrendering to the despair of the present moment.
So just look at the massive structure we have built here over the last few minutes.
It's huge.
We have a moral God at the center. We have a physical creation that is fundamentally good. We have human beings armed with the dignity of choice.
We have meaning unfolding in the grit of history.
We have the uncompromising demand for morality and public justice, mechanisms to transform agonizing suffering, and finally we have the moral force of hope pulling humanity forward.
It's a breathtaking intellectual and spiritual edifice, but an edifice doesn't feed you on a Tuesday.
No, it does not.
It doesn't tell you how to resolve a dispute with your neighbor. For this massive, world-altering framework to survive the collapse of empires, it had to be translated into the absolute fabric of the everyday. So, what does this all mean for daily life?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the mechanism for that translation is the Torah.
You're right.
Strictly speaking, the Torah refers to the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. It is frequently, and honestly somewhat inadequately, translated as law.
Law sounds so rigid.
It does. A much more accurate translation is teaching, instruction, or guidance.
It is the ultimate operating manual. Going back to our analogy, it's how you download that open source code of meaning into the actual hardware of daily life.
Exactly. The Torah contains the historical narratives, the covenantal demands, the ethical commands, and highly specific ritual practices.
So if you want to know what the meaning of life is, you don't just sit on a mountain and ponder the cosmos. You look at the Torah, because it shapes the actual physical practices of the community.
And this is the secret to their endurance. Judaism doesn't just ask you to agree with a list of abstract beliefs in your head.
Right.
It demands a daily physical discipline. It dictates how you harvest your crops so the poor can glean the edges.
It structures your week so that on the Sabbath, you completely halt the machinery of commerce. You have to remember that you are a free human being, not just a beast of burden.
It dictates the prayers you say when you wake up and when you eat.
Meaning there is absolutely no divide between the sacred and the secular.
That entire concept doesn't even exist here.
You don't leave your religion at the door of the synagogue. The everyday world is the primary theater of operations.
A regular family meal, a passing conversation, signing a business contract, these aren't secular distractions from spiritual life.
They are the exact raw materials you use to encounter the divine. Truth is something you live with your hands and your feet.
And honestly, it acts as the ultimate antidote to the modern condition we talked about at the beginning.
Oh, the compartmentalization.
Yes. Today, we meticulously compartmentalize our lives. We have our professional identity in one box,
Our political affiliations in another.
our private spiritual thoughts locked away in a third. But Judaism obliterates those boxes. It insists on a fiercely unified vision where everything you do is connected under the watchful eye of a morally serious God.
And that really brings us full circle. We started by looking at a map of empires that crumbled into dust because they relied on centralized power and physical force.
But Judaism didn't just survive. It fundamentally shaped the moral foundation of Western civilization.
And it did so because of this relentless, comprehensive passion for meaning. It took the highest, most abstract concepts of the divine and anchored them firmly in the dirt, the history, and the daily habits of a people.
It's a system that insists the ordinary world is exactly where the extraordinary work of meaning takes place. It simply doesn't let you check out.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly uncomfortable paradox to think about today.
Uh-oh.
Well, as modern people, we are obsessed with the idea of ultimate freedom, right?
Yeah.
We want to be totally untethered, free from rules, free from restrictive traditions, free to invent our own personal meaning from scratch every single morning.
Right, the ultimate individualist.
Exactly. And we look at the Torah with its hundreds of daily commands and obligations, and we think, man, that looks like a prison.
It can look that way from the outside.
But look around. In an era where we have achieved maximum individual freedom and thrown off almost all the old rules, we are experiencing an absolute epidemic of anxiety, isolation, and a crushing sense of meaninglessness.
We feel completely lost in the vacuum.
Right. So could it be that the constraint of a highly structured, ritually sanctified life, where every meal, every rest day, and every social obligation is bound by a moral architecture, is actually the prerequisite for true freedom?
Hmm.
What if having the map, with all its rigid boundaries and demanding routes, is the only way to ensure you actually reach a meaningful destination?
That's a powerful thought.
Think about that the next time you feel overwhelmed by the chaos of a Tuesday afternoon. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.